Hey guys, how you doing? This is jpsarrireviews coming to you once again with another book review. X-Men: The Age of Apocalypse. It's a classic mid-90s crossover story that a lot of people are fans of, a lot of people also hate. So people are divided in regards to it, and we're gonna go through all of that while we read it. The cover was made by Billy Tan and the Guru-eFX, which is pretty cool, as you can see right there. On the side, X-Men: The Age of Apocalypse. Here on the back, it says right there, the critically acclaimed fan favorite storyline that rocked the X-Men universe to its core is collected in chronological order. Uncanny X-Men 320 to 321, X-Men 40 to 41, Cable 20, X-Men Alpha, Amazing X-Men 1 to 4, Astonishing X-Men 1 to 4, Factor X 1 to 4, Gambit and the Externals 1 to 4, Generation Next 1 to 4, Weapon X 1 to 4, Excalibur 1 to 4, X-Men 1 to 4, X-Men Omega, Age of Apocalypse, The Chosen, and X-Men Ashcan number 2. So definitely that's a lot of comic books. As you can see, removing the dust jacket, you got this on the side of the sleeve. It says the original alternate X saga. And of course, it's an introduction, and here is the number of the creators. There's a really large number of people involved in this. You have Scott Lobdell, Mark Waid, Fabian Nicieza. You have Larry Hama, Warren Ellis, Howard Mackie, Roger Cruz, Ron Garney, Ian Churchill, Steve Epting, Terry Dodson, Tony Daniels, Salvador Larroca, Chris Bachalo, Adam Kubert, Ken Lashley, Renato Arlem, and Steve Skroce. Well, now here's the interior cover, and I really like this one. On the original, if I'm not mistaken, the original run of the first printing of this, it was just a basic black, and I think just with the silver lettering, if I'm not mistaken. So I like the second one. I think the third one and the if they are already on the fourth one, they all have the same. I really like it. It's just, this is, love the art of Chris Bachalo right here. Pretty cool. I love this. The way they're doing this wraparound art on this omnibuses, to be honest with you, I was not really a big fan at first, but the more I really own these books, the more I really like them. They're pretty cool. I think there's a lot of improvements also in the quality of the book, and as you can see, it's really a humongous book. Here again, you see on the cover in the beginning, it says X-Men: The Age of Apocalypse. Again, pretty good art. I really like the design of Sabretooth there. And here you have pretty much the glossary of everything that is here. You got Legion Quest, you have X-Men Alpha, Amazing X-Men, the people are involved, Fabian Nicieza, Astonishing X-Men, Factor X, Gambit and the Externals, Generation Next, Weapon X, Excalibur, and so on and so on. Now, I'm not a big fan of this pretty much table of contents like this, where everything is kind of pretty much cluster into the different collections and who is the writer. It doesn't really give you a date. I love the more classic ones where actually they are showing you the date when it was published, and it goes in pretty much in chronological order. This doesn't have it, but they do that with a lot of this crossover omnibuses, which I'm not a big fan of. I really like the more classic approach where you have the time frame and the issue, what follows, so that way people can come and follow that and they know exactly what is next. Of course, you're gonna notice that if you read through the book, but if you want a quick guide, definitely this doesn't provide that. Now, as I was Legion Quest, really interesting art. If I'm not mistaken, this is Roger Cruz. Loved actually Roger Cruz art. He's from Brazil. He's actually a legend in Brazil as an artist. Yeah, and Roger Cruz and Scott Lobdell and Mark Waid actually are the writers of the story. You probably have heard Age of Apocalypse a lot. A lot of people have a lot of mixed emotions in regards to it. Now, for me, reading the stories back in the 90s, I didn't read them all through. That was around the time that I was actually stopping to read comics. And normally around 1995, 1996, I stopped reading comics around this time. I was more into video games during that time. I was a lot into like the arcade stuff. And involved into it. I was going to tournaments and stuff like that, playing for King of Fighters and things like that, Street Fighter. I was getting into that kind of stuff, and it was going in a different time in my life where comics were not as interesting anymore as a teenager. I was also going through some challenges, personal challenges, growing up. with my family, my parents. I was more independent then. So definitely there was no time for me even to afford to buy a lot of these comics or money or any resources. So definitely for me, it was an interesting time, and this is definitely Legion Quest 2, and I think this is just we changed to Andy Kubert, and I love Andy Kubert's art. And definitely this is at the beginning of Andy's also. Andy already was doing a lot of stuff in that time with X-Men. After the departure of Jim Lee, he was definitely the person in charge of it. And definitely I think he was the closest in many ways to Jim Lee's style in so many ways, although it was different. I love this. And definitely Andy was pretty much, at that time, was one of the favorite artists for that. Now this is Scott Lobdell still writing. And this is Ron Garney. I really like Garney's work. He has done some work for Marvel and some others. Ron Garney has sometimes it's good, sometimes bad, particularly here. But this is done during the earlier years of his career. I love his more cartoony approach to things. I love his clean panels. Although I love the way he designed the panels. They structures very, very well. And definitely he did it here with this issue. There are times where actually his art kind of loses some proportions are not that great, like you can see right here with Beast or this Angel right there. I don't know, something about it that the proportions are not that great. So I don't know, it differs. But there are times where these proportions are better. So I don't know, it just you can see when the young artists, and I mentioned this many times before, there's an evolution, and sometimes the art it's up and down, and sometimes it's better than others. Now this is the X-Men, and as you can see, this is Andy Kubert, going back to Andy. Love that what he's doing here. This is Ron Garney doing the pencils. But yeah, what I was saying, that I stopped reading comics during that time, so I never really got the chance to collect all this collection. And it wasn't 2 years later that I got the opportunity to read them, the soft covers, later on in life. And then of course I read some of the issues like Alpha and Omega and all of those. So I kind of put things together. Then of course I got the digital collection when I started reading digitally. So that's what I've been reading, everything. And then of course I discontinued with Legion Quest, and then now I got this Omnibus, which to me is, I wouldn't say that I'm a big fan of the story in itself. This is Ian Churchill. I like Ian Churchill, not too crazy about the inking though. That's the only thing that I have some issues here with the inking here. But definitely I like Ian Churchill. Sometimes he does great. Particularly I love his stuff with Cable and stuff, the New Mutant stuff, well, the X-Force. That what he was doing, I really like it. I don't know, I like his proportions. I just feel that the inking wasn't that great to kind of show his art style in a much better manner. But definitely you can see, I love his stuff what he did with also with Deadpool. Definitely pretty good. So you can see it right here, but definitely it's not bad at all. I love some of the proportions, very 90s stuff, very 90s-esque style. Love this one right here. Let me show you. Never been a big fan of this. I mentioned it in all the videos before, this type of things, but definitely this is not a bad one. As you can see right there, very, very cool. And we're going back to that. I don't know, it kind of breaks when they do that. To me, it's like they break the reading, like you're reading already in a manner, pretty much in an angle. You're going on the same, pretty much, the same direction. So it kind of breaks the flow, in my opinion. And if it was like that all along, then it would be nice. If you're reading all of the pages like that, like some artists have done. But in this case, it's not. It kind of breaks the flow. The same when you're reading manga, you read them from in this case from the right to the left. So definitely you kind of go with that flow, and I think that interrupts the flow. That's my opinion. Now X-Men Alpha here, this is when everything starts technically right here, and this is of course Madureira, who is definitely at the beginning of his career. Although Madureira was already doing some work for others, and he was already doing stuff with Marvel. People remember a lot of stuff that he did in this case, in this crossover. This crossover was the beginning, at least for many artists, not because it was the beginning for them in the career, but it became the point where a lot of people start paying attention. That's when they notice. After, like I was mentioning earlier, after the departure of Jim Lee from Marvel, and of course not only Jim Lee but everybody else, Mark Silvestri, the beginnings of Image Comics, of course there was a lot of challenges for Marvel. companies were trying to compete with this newcomers. Now that they have their own introduction, they were trying to get more sales. So of course, Image Comics was taking a lot from from Marvel, also from DC. DC, of course, came up with ideas like the Dead and Return of Superman, of course, earlier in the process. Also, Batman Nightfall. They were trying to compete, creating darker teams, darker subjects. But Marvel also was trying to compete, and that's the reason why they came up with some ideas. Lobdell got in it. Andy Kubert was doing the art. Fabian Nicieza was doing a lot of work. So they were pretty much the follow-ups, and they were kind of trying to fit into those shoes. So there were not many stories that I would say interesting or as important, or I would say that they were conveying or attracting more readers. There were some crossovers like Executioner's Song that I need to review at some point. There were other things that were happening. They were trying to dissect, break things out. And then in the mid-1995, that's when they decided to come up with this. Of course, 94 and 95, they start publishing. And it was a crossover where they brought all of these talents and also many newcomers, new artists, some from Brazil, some from Spain, some from Canada. Artists that they were already, some of them known. Some of these writers were already working. Some people were editors, like Larry Hama was already an editor for Marvel. But they didn't have as much opportunity to do other things. So they brought him into this crossover and they put them all together and they started really showcasing the art and their style. And definitely that's what it is. I think what I like about this book is just the fact that there's a crossover with so many different artists at their start of their careers, or in the pretty much in the more crucial times of their careers. And here you have Generation Next, and this is definitely, I love, in this case, this is Bachalo, and I love this. Now, the thing with this, what I'm not a fan of the comics that we're introducing for Generation Next is the coloring, the transfer. I think it's because the paper of when this artist was created of this comics, they had that different like laminated type of paper, like kind of like a very bright paper. So the transfer to this is very dark and murky. It looks dark and murky. It doesn't compare to what I remember. Maybe I'm wrong. It just looks dark and murky. And it definitely hides the in this case the art, the beautiful art of Bachalo. Bachalo is a magnificent artist. I love his style. I definitely think it's a highlight here that is actually this Generation Next is kind of hurt by this. Of course, Bachalo in the early 90s when he started working for Sandman, I think that's where he got popular, and of course he came to Marvel and started working in this crossover. Definitely, but man, his art is pretty good. I love Bachalo's work here. Very nice. And then we go again, Astonishing X-Men. Well, I think this replaces the Uncanny X-Men. And here you can see, it's pretty cool. I love the art. I think this is, again, we're going to Joe Madureira. I think one of the highlights of this collection is Madureira's work. Every time you turn the page, you see Madureira really good. Gambit and the Externals, which replaces the X-Force. Pretty cool. Love this. I think this is Tony Daniel. Love Tony Daniel when he was working with Mark Silvestri. He did a lot of work, of course, for Strong Man. Looks pretty cool there. He was working for Top Cow Productions. Love the stuff that he did there, but definitely here with Marvel. I love Tony Daniel now. He does a lot of great stuff working for DC, Batman, all that kind of stuff. Pretty cool. Love this stuff. Now, going into the story, because maybe you want to know what's going on with this story because it's so convoluted. Well, everything starts in Legion Quest. The son, of course, of in Professor X, Legion, his demented son, psychotic son, goes to the past trying to kill Magneto, and by accident kills his father. And that really reshapes everything. The story, the timeline, everything is reshaped. This is an Elseworld story. It was an Elseworld story when it was developed. And it really changed the future. So, of course, this is a world where actually Apocalypse comes to power 10 years earlier than before. He attacks before and he takes control of the world. Now, the life of these characters, like you can see right here with Weapon X, which is Wolverine, and this is by Larry Hama. He's the one that wrote this, and I love Larry Hama. Big fan of G.I. Joe stuff, what he did in the 80s, and a lot of stuff that he has done after that. But definitely, and anything that has to do with militaristic, like ninja stuff or samurai stuff or Japanese lore, he's fantastic. Of course, he's Japanese American, and definitely, and he was in the Vietnam War. He's a Vietnam vet. So when it comes about that, he knows, and he really makes things militaristic to that point. Also, he's trained on martial arts. So there's a lot of things. He has been an actor, so definitely I love him. He's a great guy. But here you can see a lot of this stuff. So this is what happens. So Apocalypse takes over, and because he takes over the world, of course, the timeline changes. Some of the heroes that we know as heroes become villains or are in support of Apocalypse. The humans are running away. Apocalypse is pretty much calling the Coolings, which technically are he's killing humans, and he also killing those are going against him. He wants to control the power. So all these different groups are created that are going after him, and of course Magneto is kind of leading the resistance for mutants, and he's trying to find a way to destroy Apocalypse, because first of all, after he was saved by his friend, of course, Professor X, he believes his dream, he decides to defend his dream. So now, of course, Magneto is a good guy. So it is a very interesting, when you come to think of it, it's a very interesting, a very cool story. It is a very cool concept, to be honest with you. When you think about it, when you come to think about the premises of the story, you think it's pretty cool. This is the future. The only person that can change that is Bishop. He comes from the future. His plan is to defend and really gonna redo everything that has done to save the life of Professor X. X-Men, who is the son, of course, of Scott Summers, the Cyclops, and Jean Grey. This is the DNA son. Now, this is Excalibur. This is the team that is being led by, in this case, Nightcrawler. And this is the one actually that replaces Excalibur. This is pretty good. This is Brother Kane. This is Mon Kane. And this is actually Juggernaut, that he becomes a man of peace, which is a really, really cool concept. Love the art. Very cool. But definitely I love it. This is actually, the art is by Ken Lashley. And I like his art. Again, what I like about this collection is that there's so many different artists at the beginning of their careers, or artists that didn't have as much work during that time because, of course, they overshadowed by all of those greats, that they left and went to other companies, or they went to Image Comics. So definitely it is good to see artists that at their beginning, at their career, like Tony Daniel, people like that. Andy Kubert was doing a lot of stuff then. He was definitely the guy to do in the 90s the art after the departure of, in this case, Silvestri and Lee. He was the guy. And I really like Andy. I definitely love it. I love his progress over the years. His art has gotten better, in my opinion, more stylized, in my opinion, better. But you can see, and the thing with the stories that it can be a bit convoluted. Yes, it is, because there's so many artists, so many writers, all working together, coming with a dream. The premise of the story are good. It's just how in this case, the delivery in the end, the application of the entire story is done. And that's the difference. I think that's what makes the big problem. And we go back to Madureira's work. Every artist brings something different, some better than others, but these are the best artists at the time for Marvel, and they're all here together. But one highlight to me is Madureira's. Every time I turn the page and I see Madureira's work, I really enjoy it. I'm a big fan of the work he did during those years. And after that, I love his style, how his style has evolved. The introduction definitely of manga and anime in his style, it's just so prevalent in the way he does things. And here you got Gambit and his the externals fighting in this case, the Imperium Guard, the Shi'ar Guard, which is cool. Gladiator right there. They're going for what was that? For a crystal. I forgot what was the name of the crystal? The Korean crystal, if I'm not mistaken. They need to protect it. Yeah, the M-Cran crystal. Cool idea. It goes on, and it's all the reality of the story is that all those teams, they're all in reality kind of led by different leaders. They have different leaders, but they're all led in the end by Magneto. The plan is to undo everything that was done and save Earth, save mutants, and save humans. So the Starjammer is pretty cool. So a lot of things are introduced in these stories that are part of the normal culture of the X-Men, of all the comics are all combined. They change the names of the comics. They replace those comics like Generation X, which replaces Generation X, and all of them. And again, here is another, again, I was telling you, Bachalo's work is fantastic. Not crazy fan of the transfer. It looks too dark, too murky. They couldn't light it up a little bit, in my opinion. Even if it wasn't the transfer, they could have made it a bit lighter, so that way you can see a lot more detail, because definitely his art has a lot of great detail. Weapon X, and this is Adam Kubert, the brother of Andy Kubert. Now, remember this, Andy Kubert and Adam Kubert, they're the sons of Joe Kubert, the legend in comics, Joe Kubert. I do like Andy's art more, but Adam does have also a great pencil art. You know, they're great. They both great. Excalibur. Definitely this concept, the idea of having Nightcrawler to become the leader, I think that was a great idea. Definitely, I think they did a fantastic job in really portraying the character. I really like these issues when Nightcrawler is the leader. That story has been introduced. They have take some of these elements in the animated cartoon, the X-Men animated cartoon in the 90s, but also in some other cartoons later on, other X-Men cartoons. So definitely it's good. I really like those concepts that were applied here. Factor X, which replaces X Factor. As you can see right there, this is John Francis Moore, who is the writer there. Steve Epting. I love Steve Epting back in the 90s when he was doing the Avengers stuff. And of course, I love the stuff that he did later with, in this case, Brubaker with Captain America. I love his art. This is earlier in his time, in his career. He's doing more like a 90s style thing, you know. Even though I think I like his art more in Avengers than I did here in the X-Men, his art has evolved as well to the point that it's more realistic, and I really like his realistic approach to art. Domino, she's an agent for Apocalypse. You have Grizzly right there, so you can see, I don't know if you can see it well, they're just pretty much killing mutants. Going back to Excalibur right here. Again, I don't like the flow, but it's pretty good. This art is pretty good. This Lashley's art. This is Deadman Waid, which is Deadpool. Love that. Love this concepts here. Again, Monkane look good. I love the fact that they depower in one sense of the anger. This case, Kane. Juggernaut. He's a powerful man, but now he's seeking peace. So definitely I feel that was to me, that's a great part of the story. And this is the part when you really read at the stories, again, the Waid right there looks pretty neat. What I like about the story, like I was telling earlier, is the concept. The concept, it's so good. The concept is great. And I really enjoy that. You know, I really enjoy the fact that they try something new and different. And that what makes the story different. You know, the premises of the story are fantastic. The ideas of bringing these characters and changing some of that into this Elseworld story was fantastic. I would say at the end, it was just the delivery, the application, the way that in the end it was actually presented, you know, in the end, you know, because you bring in so many different writers. If this was just a unique writer for all of them, probably the ideas would have, or even just 2 or 3 writers who have been great, but you have so many different writers and everybody is given their own flavor, their own style. They're pretty much, you know, expressing how they feel, how they see those characters. So that can get things convoluted. And of course, the art, although this is art, I can tell one thing, there's not much art here that I dislike. Or I favor over others. I think it's just classic 90s art, full of explosions, full of colors, full of detail, a bit convoluted, yes. But because there's so many different voices and so many different pencils, so definitely that can throw off, you know, anybody. Now, I like this one, the Astonishing X-Men cover. I do like this one with Rogue, and I do like actually this intro page here with Sabretooth. This is Scott Lobdell. Jeph Loeb is doing the dialogue. Of course, the great Jeph Loeb, coming from, in this case, from DC. He was working with Batman. The Batman, you know, the stories that he wrote for Batman, they're really iconic. And this is the start. He started doing some work for Marvel. Of course, Madureira's work here is, I would say, a highlight to me. Love the style. Love his cartoony style. Love that, you know, in this case, anime style. All of that combined, it definitely, it is an outstanding thing. In my opinion, it really shadows some of the art of some of the other great artists as well. And then we're going back to Andy Kubert. Definitely love Andy here. Really looking some cool stuff. Now we have Weapon X here again, and love this art actually. I think Andy was doing great, Andy Kubert. Larry Hama, of course, doing the writing for this book. Love the art and the way Every panel is set. Really looking good. This is Carol Danvers. I really like Carol Danvers here. She looks like Angela. It has like Spawn feel right there. Again, when it comes about militaristic stuff, Larry Hama was the man. He's still the man for that. But as you can see, the art, you know, so again, the art changes. Every artist kind of gives some voice to it. I think the fact that the book is a bit convoluted, the story has always been expressed by some comic book reviewers as, oh, too convoluted. A lot of people don't want to look at it from the perspective of, you know, everything that was great about it. I wouldn't say that the story is the best story of all the X-Men stories, but definitely it's up there when it comes about the concept. You know, I think it was a great concept. I think it's better than some other stories that are highly regarded, even more modern X-Men stories. I really like the concept of the ideas with the way he, in this case, Bachalo drew Colossus. It's just pretty cool. I like his Colossus a lot. Definitely, it's a very cool outfit he's wearing, you know, with the little mask and everything. Strong man, very small, you know, head. Gladiator. So definitely, man, there's a lot of great concepts here, a lot of great ideas here, and you know, in my opinion, it's good, you know, and I'm glad that I'm able to now to own this book, to be honest with you, after all these years, because, you know, during that time I never really ever even finished it. You know, I never, you know, had the opportunity to read all the story as a whole. And years later, of course, I got the opportunity to read some of the trade paperbacks, you know, but they're not complete, you know, they don't have the whole story. So having this definitely is good. Some of the newer stuff, some of the stuff that is being collected afterwards, we have the companion omnibus for this that I don't have, but I'm going to get at some point. It has the more modern stuff, which is technically prequels and sequels and everything that happened in between. Gambit and the Externals, love this one. This is Salvador Larroca, a Spanish artist. Love his art style. Love this art here. Love her. She looks great there. And Salvador Larroca, there's a lot, like, again, they were using a lot of artists. There were newcomers, people from Spain, Roger Cruz from Brazil. They have people like Bachalo, who is, you know, American Portuguese. They have a lot of people from Canada. They have people from different backgrounds. So they have some of those artists that also wanted to make pretty much a place in the industry. And definitely, when you come to think of it, you know, the art, it might be uneven at times, but definitely it's not bad. You know, if you come to think of it, it's not bad for 90s stuff. And actually, I found it cleaner than even the art of Rob Liefeld in his omnibus. You know, if you come to compare him, the art of this guy's Andy Kubert with the art of Liefeld, I choose Kubert any given day. I choose, you know, Bachalo. I choose Larroca. I choose any of these artists. I found it more interesting, more appealing, in my opinion. Love this one right here. Look at that. Love those veins popping. Really look good. But you, like, again, like I was saying earlier, you have to see every comic as they were, you know, the way they were developed, the way they were created, the purpose of the artist. You have to see them on those eyes, with those eyes, you know, under that light. You have to see that. Whether you like the artist or not, whether you like the direction of the comics went, I think there is a time and place for everything. I love 70s comics, I love 80s comics, I love 90s comics. I even love some of the newer comics. Not all, but the same I can be said about anything in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Not everything that happened in the 70s was great. Not everything that happens in the 80s was great. Not everything that happened in the 90s was great. At the end, it's just a matter of you picking and choosing what you prefer. X-Men Omega, and pretty much the end of it, you know. And here you have the artists, Mark Waid, Scott Lobdell doing the writing part, Roger Cruz. He starts everything, he's going to end everything, and I really like Roger Cruz. He's, and I would say, a legend in Brazil because of his art. He has worked for Marvel, he has done stuff for, I think, for DC as well. For other companies, he has done stuff in his country, in Brazil, you know, and I love that. Definitely, he's bringing everything to an end with this book. And this here, and you can see, of course, the end of it, and it's pretty cool. So technically, everything you have read so far is one single story, and there's nothing more. Of course, you can do the companion, but this is it. There's nothing else. There's no real connection in the end, although later on it was put as canon. There's no real connection. But as you can see, the more artists. Well, this is actually the cards. I like that they expanded, make it big, so you can read them through. Those collectible cards. that I never owned, I never had. This is black and white. More stuff. More art. Twilight of the Age of Apocalypse, trade paperback, the stuff that wasn't trade paperbacks, X-Facts. So, you know, again, Marvel always gives you a lot of factors. Love Blink right there. And, of course, here you have some of those covers that they were introduced. Those covers from the trade paperbacks. In conclusion, do I recommend this book? I certainly do. I don't recommend it for everyone, but I recommend it for those who grew up in the 90s reading the comics, the X-Men comics, and they are fans of this run. Those are fans of the X-Men animated show and remember it vividly. And those are fans of this more dynamic 90s art. Yes, a lot of people are going to dissect the story, tell you that it's just bad because this or because of that. They don't like that because it's too convoluted. There's so many voices, so many characters, everything is a mess. Some people prefer something that's smaller, and I understand that. I understand completely. I love stories that are more, a single team, one single person. But here it's just everything that it's in the X-Men universe all combined together. Everything is redone. It's a new world. It's a new mindset. Pretty much everything has been changed. It's an Elseworld story, and definitely can get convoluted. But the fact that you have the Omnibus and you can read them through all the stories, whether you like them or not in the end, it's a plus. And if you're a big fan of omnibuses or X-Men omnibuses, and definitely this is part of the collection, because in the end it really sets the stage for things in the future. Even though it was an Elseworld story then, it then became part of the pretty much of the timeline. So definitely it's a recommendation. Also, many of artists here are pretty much at the beginning of their careers. They're in the middle of their careers. It's a crucial time in their careers, and definitely it's nice to see them, how they develop. And many of them have become very big in the industry, and their art has evolved also substantially. So it's good to see their first steps. I'm going to get the companion when I get a chance, and I'll review it when the time comes. But once again, I want to say thank you for watching. If you like this review, let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know how you feel about this book. You like it, you don't like it. What is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? Again, I would like to hear from you. So my friends, God bless, and I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.